hung like a dying ember in the sky, its sickle-thin crescent casting a sickly pallor over the desolate stretch of Highway 13. The night was a living thing, its darkness thick and suffocating, pierced only by the faltering beams of an old sedan's headlights. Inside, Maya's laughter rang out, a fragile spark of warmth against the encroaching cold. She leaned across the console, her breath soft against Jake's cheek as her lips brushed his skin, a fleeting kiss that stirred his heart. His hand rested on her knee, fingers tracing idle patterns to the faint, crackling strains of a love song bleeding through the radio's static. Beyond the windshield, the world dissolved into a blur of gnarled pines and creeping fog, their skeletal forms twisting in the moonlight like specters clawing at the edges of reality. "You're gonna get us lost," Maya teased, her voice a melody of mischief as she laced her fingers through his. Her dark hair shimmered in the lunar glow, framing a face alight with reckless joy. Jake's grin was a shield against the dark, his hazel eyes glinting with the confidence of youth. "Never," he vowed, stealing a glance at her. "I've got this." They were bound for a cabin Jake had found online, a cozy retreat he swore wasn't some backwoods haunt, though Maya's arched brow suggested otherwise. The destination didn't matter to her. It was these moments, the stolen glances, the shared laughter, the electric hum of their connection that made her feel alive. 2 years of love had forged a quiet fire between them, burning steady through college exams, whispered dreams, and the kind of fights that only deepened their bond. Tonight was a celebration of that fire, a promise of countless adventures yet to come, etched in the way Jake tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering, and the way Maya's smile answered, bright and unguarded. Then the car shuddered, a guttural cough ripping through the engine like a death rattle. The dashboard lights flickered, dimming to embers, before winking out entirely. Jake's grin dissolved into a grimace as the sedan lurched, sputtered, and died, coasting to a stop on the gravel shoulder. The radio fell silent, its absence a void that swallowed the warmth from the air. A suffocating stillness pressed against the windows. "Perfect," Maya muttered, her voice sharp with irritation, though fear flickered beneath it. "Your shortcut's a masterpiece, Jake." "It's fine," he said, but his clenched jaw and the tension in his shoulders betrayed the lie. He popped the hood and stepped into the night, the cold air slithering into the car like a predator. Maya watched his silhouette through the fogged windshield, his movements jerky as he fumbled under the hood, cursing under his breath. Minutes later, he slammed it shut, the sound a gunshot in the silence. "Battery's dead, or hell, I don't know." He checked his phone, then hers, holding them aloft, as if pleading with the sky. No signal, just the endless ribbon of Highway 13, flanked by pines that loomed like mourners at a funeral, their branches swaying in a wind that didn't exist. Maya shivered, pulling her jacket tight. The air felt wrong, heavy with an unspoken malice, as if the night itself were watching. "Now what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, fraying at the edges. "We wait," Jake said, sliding back into the driver's seat. His attempt at calm was brittle, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror, scanning the empty road. "Someone will come by, or we walk." Eventually, the words hung hollow, unconvincing even to him. The minutes stretched into an eternity, each one heavier than the last. The moonlight dimmed, devoured by a fog that coiled around the car like a serpent, its tendrils pressing against the windows. Every rustle in the trees sent Maya's pulse racing, every shadow beyond the glass twisting into shapes that weren't there. Jake held her hand, but his grip was iron, his knuckles bone white. An hour bled away, the silence growing thicker, more oppressive, until it felt like a weight crushing her chest. "This place, it's wrong," Maya whispered, her breath fogging the window. The words felt like a confession, as if naming the dread would summon it. Jake nodded, his voice low, strained. "It's too damn quiet." The silence shattered with a low, guttural rumble. a sound that clawed its way through the fog. Headlights pierced the haze, twin beacons of sickly yellow, growing brighter, closer. Maya's heart surged with desperate hope. Rescue, maybe, or at least a passerby. Jake leaned forward, squinting into the mist. It wasn't a car. It was a bus, ancient and decrepit, its rusted frame sagging under layers of grime, the paint peeling like flesh from a corpse. It slowed with a tortured groan, its brakes screeching like a scream stifled in a throat. The doors hissed open, exhaling a stench of mildew and something sharper, metallic like blood, left to fester. A man leaned out, his tattered conductor's uniform clinging to a skeletal frame. His face was a nightmare carved in moonlight skin, too pale, too taut, stretched over bones that seemed to shift beneath it. His eyes were sunken pits, black as the void, glinting with something that wasn't human. Need a lift? His voice was a dry rasp, like dead leaves grinding underfoot, each word a violation of the silence. Jake's hand tightened on Maya's, his hesitation a scream in itself. Her gut churned, urging her to stay, to barricade the doors and face the cold, rather than step into that bus. But the isolation, the creeping dread, and the bone-deep chill pushed her to nod, her voice a trembling whisper. Just to a town. They grabbed their bags and climbed aboard, the doors snapping shut with a clang that reverberated in Maya's chest like a coffin lid slamming closed. The interior was a tomb, lit by flickering fluorescent lights that cast jagged shadows across rows of empty seats. A single passenger sat near the back, an old woman, her face shrouded by a frayed shawl, her gnarled hands clutching a tattered Bible. Her lips moved in a feverish chant, the words too soft to discern, but their rhythm was a pulse of dread that set Maya's teeth on edge. The conductor gestured to the seats, his bony fingers trembling as if barely tethered to his hand. "Sit anywhere," he rasped, then shuffled to the front, where the driver, a hulking figure shrouded in a hooded jacket, sat, motionless, hands steady on the wheel. His presence a void that sucked the air from the bus. The bus lurched forward, and Maya clung to Jake's arm, her nails biting into his skin. The air inside was thick, rancid, heavy with the reek of decay and that sharp, metallic temps that made her stomach roil. The windows were streaked with grime, blurring the world outside into a smear of writhing shadows. The seats were decayed, their fabric torn, stained with dark, oily patches that glistened faintly, as if still wet. Maya's skin crawled, her eyes darting to the scratches etched into the armrests, the faint outlines of handprints pressed into the filth. "Where's this bus going?" Jake demanded, his voice slicing through the low hum of the engine. Sharp with defiance, the conductor turned, his eyes glinting like polished obsidian. "Wherever you need to go," he said, his smile a thin, predatory slash that didn't touch his eyes. The words were a lie, a lure, and Maya's heart pounded, a primal warning screaming in her blood. She leaned closer to Jake, her whisper barely audible. "This isn't right. We shouldn't be here. It's just a creepy old bus," he murmured. But his grip on her hand was bruising, his voice hollow with doubt. The old woman's muttering grew louder, a rhythmic litany that clawed at Maya's nerves. She strained to catch the words. "Lost. All lost. The road keeps them." The chant was a blade, slicing through her resolve. And when the woman's head snapped up, her blind eyes locked onto Maya's with an intensity that felt like a violation. Her lips curled into a knowing, grotesque smile, and Maya's breath caught, her heart a frantic drumbeat in her chest. "Jake," she hissed, her voice raw with panic. "We need to get off. Now." Before he could answer, the bus slowed, veering onto a narrow dirt path that hadn't been there moments before. The pines closed in, their branches scraping the windows like skeletal claws, their whispers a chorus of hunger. The conductor stood, his movements jerky, unnatural, his smile stretching into something monstrous, a maw of jagged teeth glinting in the dim light. "Almost there," he rasped, his voice a venom that seeped into Maya's bones. "Where?" Jake demanded, rising to his feet, his body a shield between Maya and the conductor. His voice trembled, but his stance was defiant. His hands balled into fists. The driver spoke, his voice a hollow, resonant void, like the echo of a scream trapped in a well. The end of the line. The bus stopped. The doors hissed open, revealing a yawning darkness beyond no road, no stars, just a void of trees and fog that pulsed with malevolent life. The conductor gestured toward the door, his eyes gleaming with a hunger that made Maya's blood freeze. "Your stop. We're not getting off here," Jake snarled, pulling Maya closer, his arm a barrier against the nightmare unfolding around them. The old woman laughed, a dry, rattling cackle that clawed at Maya's sanity. "You don't choose," she said, her voice sharp as a shard of glass. "The road does." Maya's breath caught as her eyes darted to the seats around them, empty, but scarred with dark stains, claw marks, and faint handprints that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. She glanced at the windows, and for a heartbeat, she saw them, faces, pale and hollow, pressed against the glass, their mouths stretched in silent, endless screams. Their eyes were voids, their hands scrabbling at the windows before the fog swallowed them whole. "Drive us back," Jake demanded, his voice cracking but unyielding. Asterisk now. The driver turned, his hood falling back to reveal a face that wasn't a face, just a writhing mass of shadows, a void given form, its edges bleeding into the air like ink in water. "No going back," it said, the words slithering into Maya's mind, cold and invasive, rooting her to the spot. She screamed, a raw, primal sound, and grabbed Jake's hand, dragging him toward the door. They stumbled out, the cold air a brutal slap, the ground soft and treacherous beneath their feet. The bus didn't move, didn't chase, but the conductor's voice slithered after them, a serpent's hiss in the dark. "You'll be back. Everyone comes back." They ran, the forest a ravenous maw that swallowed them whole. Branches tore at their clothes, roots snagged their feet, and the fog clung to their skin like the touch of a corpse. Maya's lungs burned, her vision blurred with tears and terror, but she ran, Jake's hand an anchor in the chaos. Behind them, the bus's headlights flickered, then vanished, leaving a silence that was worse than any sound, a silence that screamed of absence, of things lost forever. Hours later, they stumbled onto a gas station, its neon sign buzzing like a dying insect in the pre-dawn light. The clerk, an old man with weathered hands and eyes that had seen too much, listened to their story, his face paling to the color of ash. "Highway 13, he whispered, his voice trembling. "Folks don't come back from there. Not whole. Last year, a couple vanished on that road. Cops found their car, empty, like it had been abandoned for years. He drove them to their sedan, still crouched on the shoulder, untouched by time or weather. It started instantly, as if mocking their terror." Maya clung to Jake as they sped away, refusing to look back. The hum of the engine, a frail shield against the memory of that bus's rumble. They didn't speak of it, not to each other, not to anyone, but the horror lingered, a parasite burrowing into their minds. Why was the bus there? Who or what were those figures? And why did the road feel alive, hungry, waiting? Days later, unpacking her bag, Maya's hands froze as she pulled out a small, worn Bible, its leather cover cracked like ancient skin. She had never seen it before. Its pages were brittle, yellowed, inscribed with hundreds of names in a shaky, unfamiliar script. Hers and Jake's were the last, scrawled in ink that glistened wetly, as if freshly written. She dropped it, her scream stifled, and shoved it into a drawer, slamming it shut as if that could bury the truth. They tried to reclaim their lives classes, coffee runs, late-night talks, but the shadow of Highway 13 clung to them, the stain that wouldn't wash out. Jake's eyes lingered on dark corners, his hands twitching at the sound of distant engines. Maya felt it too, the weight of unseen eyes, the sense that something was waiting, biding its time. At night, when the world fell silent, Maya lay awake, her ears straining for the sound she dreaded most, a low, guttural rumble, like a bus rolling through the dark. She'd wake Jake, and they'd lie still, hearts pounding. As the sound grew closer, then faded, a predator circling just out of sight. It always returned, relentless, a reminder that they hadn't escaped. On moonless nights, when the fog rolled in thick and suffocating, Maya saw them headlights in the distance, twin eyes glowing in the dark, waiting at the edge of the world. She'd clutch Jake's hand, her breath shallow, and they'd pray the lights would pass. But deep in her bones, Maya knew the truth. Highway 13 wasn't a place. It was a hunter, and it had marked them as its own.